Hey everyone, what up? Mad Kaiser here. Now, if you've been following my activity on social media, you'll notice that I've been recently watching a certain little anime called Fairy Tail for the very first time in 2024. And why is that? Well, it leans to several reasons. So maybe Fairy Tail 2, though I'll have to, get the first one, and obviously I'm slowly getting to Fairy Tail to, review that one. But mostly, I was just curious and interested about this anime. And since, like with my JRPGs, I'm also into anime as well. And at the time of this video, Fairy Tail the anime has turned 15 years old, which is really nuts. Like, wow! And since I've completed the main series now, I thought, why not give my general thoughts, review, or whatever the hell that's completely spoiler free of, well, Fairy Tail. But before we begin, if you like what you're seeing here, then by all means, like the video, click the subscribe button if you're new, and hit that bell notification icon if you want more RPG content and maybe anime content from yours truly. And with that said, let's get back to the video, cause I'm fired up now! Or maybe that's due to the spicy chicken wings I had, which means I got a real fire in my belly. Okay, no. With that said, let's go! Now one must ask, what is Fairy Tail? Well, you see, Fairy Tail is a long-running manga series being created by artist and writer Hiro Mashima, who involved in doing lots of other works, including things like Rave Master and Eden Zero. In an interview around 2008, the whole idea of Fairy Tail came around with hanging a bar with his own friends, partying around, as well as being a message for young people to find a calling in life, for example, getting a job. The use of magic was emphasized in Fairy Tail comes from his own ideas since he was a little kid, as he wanted to be a wizard, and he liked to think about what kind of magic would be appropriate for this character when designing the entire cast of Fairy Tail, and then would use his imagination to fill in those gaps. He initially drew a one-shot manga, which was then published by magazine Fresh in 2002, and it served as a general pilot, calling it Fairy Tail. But after some initial changes and refinements, as well as changing the last name from Tail to Tail, he then created the very first chapter of Fairy Tail, which premiered in Kodansha's weekly shonen magazine on August 2nd, 2006, and then 2 years later for the Western release. And ever since then, it was serialized weekly, all the way up to July 26, 2007, with it containing approximately around 545 chapters in 63 volumes of books. And by 2020, it was reported that the manga itself sold over 72 million copies. And then around in 2009, the manga would be adapted into an anime, being done by A1 Pictures, Dentsu Entertainment, and Satelight, being directed by Shinji Ishihara, premiering around October 12, 2009. However, Funimation were able to get the rights and license to dub the first season in 2011, with the first season being primarily done by Satelight and would last for 175 episodes. And then around in 2014 with the second season, the studio in charge would be then shifted to Bridge, and that lasted around 102 episodes. And then finally in 2018 to 2019 for the third and final season, Cloverworks would take the helm, with Bridge serving as co-animators for 51 episodes. The series would also spawn two different manga, including a prequel series known as Fairy Tail Zero and another sequel series called Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest, the former of which being Fairy Tail Zero would also be adapted by Bridge and be integrated into the final legs of Fairy Tail's second season, being dubbed as the Zero Arc. And as for 100 Years Quest, it made its debut in 2018, and it's currently still being worked on today, as well as being adapted in anime form by JC Staff in 2024. Fairy Tail would also spawn 9 OVAs, 2 feature films with one in 2012 called Fairy Tail the movie The Phoenix Priestess, and one in 2017 which being called Fairy Tail Dragon Cry. On top of also having multiple games, some of which for the PlayStation Portable and Mobile, but only Japan exclusive. But it also would spawn 2 major console JRPGs worldwide, being created by Koei Tecmo's Ghost, the same people that gave us the Atelier series and Blue Reflection, with the first one called Fairy Tail in 2020 for the PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch and PC, and then its sequel Fairy Tail 2 in 2024 for December 13th for PlayStation 4, 5, Nintendo Switch and PC, among also having 2 indie games this year with Fairy Tail Dungeons and Beach Volleyball Havoc for PC. Now, when it comes to general consensus for this anime, it's mostly been well received, by being just both a fun, exciting, comfortable, and epic shonen. But it also has its fair share of detractors, and many people really despise this anime, for lots of reasons, though we'll get there soon enough. But with that said, that's the entire history lesson of it, kids, and with that said, let's get to the real yummy fish of this video. So the story takes place in Earthland, where lots of humans have the ability to possess magic and become wizards, as well as join various guilds, with it taking center place literally in the land of Ishgard, within the Kingdom of Fury, and we follow our main hero, Natsudragnu, who is a fire dragon slayer wizard, and he was raised by his own father, that being Ignu, who's a literal fire dragon, and he comes from the titular Fairy Tail Guild itself, and travels along with his flying cat companion, that being Happy. They eventually meet a girl named Lucy Heartfilia, a celestial spirit wizard that joins Fairy Tail to not only make herself a living, but also make new friends. And together, alongside their other friends, they set out to do various jobs, as well as take on multiple adventures, find Ignu, and along the way, they'll battle against dark evil forces, including an all-powerful black wizard himself. And that is a general premise of how Fairy Tail goes. And overall, I really enjoyed this story, and that's mainly due to multiple things, one of which is the world building. As for a fantasy series, especially one that ranges from over 300 episodes, or 500 chapters if you're reading the manga, you would expect the world to be fully enriched in lore, and indeed it does, as we get lots of various details and rules and regulations and how this world truly feels separate from our own world. Like things like say the Magic Council and their contraptions, to things like the general basis of Ether Nano and Lacrimas, and how we both have light and dark guilds, and also things like the various demons from the Book of Zereth, the Celestial Spirit World, and even the world of Edelus. All of these things are absolutely cool concepts, and a lot of them get some form of exploration, and make this world, being dubbed Earthland again, very interesting. Another aspect would also have to be the various arcs of Fairy Tail itself, as some of them actually connect to each other, making it essential viewing to pay in mind for future arcs, as the serialization in this is really strong. Each little plot thread set up in one arc gets slowly built up and paid off in the next arc, making the general core part. For example, say the Sub-Zero Emperor Lion arc, where a gang of Fairy Tail take on a forbidden S-class job at a cursed island. They will eventually have to stop Gray's former childhood rival, that being Lion, from freeing a monster that once killed Gray's parents and master. And on that same arc, a plot thread where C. Grain from the Magic Council and his confidant has something else in mind. Or something like say the Sun Village arc, which is probably one of the more weaker arcs, but it serves as a general potential build-up for the next arc, that being Tartaros, where it has its very slow reveal of the most dangerous dark guild ever, and it's one even being tied to the central antagonist of the show, that being Zereth the Black Wizard. All of them do make being, well, the general central core arcs of Fairy Tail worth watching in my opinion. as well as majority of them have really high stakes, and are even able to push the characters forward while also having some truly epic fights. Now sure, some arcs are better than others, as a few of them struggle due to pacing issues here and there, and other writing decisions, but overall, the story for Fairy Tail, the general one, is still a ride worth watching and enjoying for. The characters in Fairy Tail are another reason why the series excels. Now, the core main team itself from the guild, that being Fairy Tail, are both distinct from each other with their own personalities, but also have their strengths and weaknesses, as well as certain obstacles to overcome. All of them have their own backstory, and we can see how they'll eventually grow as both people and family, as one aspect of Fairy Tail is its sense of family and friends, where many of the characters from the guild care for each other, believe in each other. None of them come across as selfish or doing something for their own self. Even the ones that would sacrifice themselves for the sake of others comes with their own good intentions, even if it does get called into question or it's just not the right call to make. Among the fact that each character is both likable in their own rights. Now let's first talk about Natsu, our main hero. Now he comes across as a lovable dog who's brave and never afraid to back down from any challenge. His sense of optimism and courage is what makes him so likable. His true belief is that members of guilds should treat others with respect, like family or friends, looking out for each other. A good example would have to be where late down in Season 1 during the Grand Magic Games arc, where he comes across a rival member from the Sabretooth Guild, where that same member was kicked out after losing a match, and mainly because that guild master just deemed her weak and disgusting, and it was that same guild where she idolized of joining in. And after crying, normally this wouldn't affect any other competing guild, but for Natsu, it does. Even though he does admit it's none of his business, he's still appalled by this behavior, and immediately goes to that same guild to teach them a painful lesson. And it's that ideology that makes him such an amazing character, among also caring for his friends. Now sure, he at times can be a bit reckless and hot-headed, no pun intended, as he does like to pick on fights with his own guildmates like say Grey, Gargiel or Gildarts, even if they don't go well for him at fact, though that's more of a comedy aspect. Upon that, he does later down the line, especially doing things like Tower of Heaven, the rest of Season 2 and the final season, where he does adapt to the situation. He learns the enemy's moves and figures out how to beat them, even if it does mean he does pull some rather risky moves. This is also further helped that he's damned hard on trying to find his missing father Ignil, who mysteriously left after 7 years. Now, is he the best? No, he's a bit of a dumbass at times. He can't really remember that much, and well, he's a bit of a perv. But all in all, that just still makes Natsu human regardless. He may not be perfect as he has tons of flaws, but in the end of the day, Natsu is still human. Then we move on to Lucy. Now, discussion surrounding Lucy Heartfilia has made her quite a contentious character to talk about, with many pointing out that she's nothing more but a useless blonde bimbo who doesn't have the fighting experience compared to the rest of Fairy Tail. And I say,
put a sock in it.
You're missing the damn point here, as she is a celestial spirit wizard who's able to summon, spirits from the celestial world to fight for her. And as we can see in her backstory, she had no fighting experience whatsoever, so clearly it's obvious that she needed to use the spirits as self-defense. But to say that she's useless at all really doesn't deserve it to her character, as clearly over time, especially during one arc where Fairy Tail would protect and give their own lives just to protect Lucy Heartfilia as one of their own, she's inspired by their bravery and fighting experience, to the point that later down the line, she does get some new fighting tactics, including using a special magic whip, and also being able to summon 2 celestial spirits at once. And even around the final season, and later down the final season, she learned a trick of using a Stardust form, where she can take upon the appearance and abilities of the celestial spirits that she summoned with. But not only that, but she also has a very powerful ass spell that can just nuke opponents. Like, oh my god, it's that powerful. But on top of being just a fighter who can improve over time, where she's no longer a pushover, she's also a generally kind person and cares for a newfound family, that being Fairy Tail. As we see in her past, despite coming from an esteemed rich family, she did have no friends at all, and her father barely even noticed her, especially with her mother recently passing away. But after joining Fairy Tail, she gained a new life and purpose, among also having other ambitions like being a writer, even if she does have trouble of paying her rent, as well as the fact that her friends do barge in completely unnoticed. And then we also get to the insecure fan service where she does get treated upon, which are just nothing more but attempts at humor. But saying all of that, Lucy is still a great character in her own right. Then we move on to Grateful Buster. Now he's sort of the more cool, no pun intended, badass type of dude, even if he does have this weird habit of pulling his shirt off. Not only that, but he sort of acts like a brother to Natsu, even if he does get dragged down in fighting him. But that's maybe because it's Natsu who started it. But hey, siblings do tend to fight at times. But beyond all that, he's loyal and respectful to the guild, especially as that same guild has taken him in, given the fact that Gray himself had a traumatic past. During his childhood, he lost his parents during an accident against a powerful demon. He does whatever he can to move on from it. He's dedicated to the Fairy Tail cause so much and loves the guild that if all else fails, he'd be willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of others. His life would also change when he meets a girl named Juvia, and while at first he's a little annoyed by her antics, he does eventually warm up to her and sees as a valuable person as much as his family and friends ever did. Not only that, but he also gains a new special magic during the latter half of season 2 and had a new motive for the final season, even if it is a dangerous one at that. And then we come to Urza. Now she's a character that's arguably as popular as everyone else in Fairy Tail, probably the most popular girl out there, and weirdly enough, she gets a lot of heat compared to Lucy. But where Lucy's more accused of being a damsel for some reason, Urza's been accused of more of a Mary Sue, the strong female type who's both beautiful and powerful, but lacks a personality and stakes as a result. However, like with Lucy, I disagree with that statement, as while Urza is really powerful, as she's one of the strongest members in Fairy Tail, being an S-class wizard, and while she does have both a commanding presence and will put the fear of God on you if you ever mess up her cake. Don't hurt Urza's cakes. But you can also see that Urza is willing to also be on the verge of self-sacrifice, as she's willing to put her life on the line, even acting as the guild's shield, with using her strongest equip armor to protect them. Her devotion and bravery is commendable, in a point where she acts like the guild's surrogate mother, and even when she's down, exhausted, and clearly needs some rest, she's willing to back up and keep going further in order to save everyone. It's also helped that her backstory is one of the darkest in the series, where she was once an orphan turned slave into a dark cold, but then eventually she found her magic after losing one of her friends who was actually from Fairy Tail, and when she learned about them and joined them. You could also even argue that her more armored equipped variants serve as a shield to protect her from her insecurities, and that aspect is challenged doing things like the Tower of Heaven arc and the latter of the Arasin Says arc, where she even throws herself into a more defenseless position with no armor whatsoever, and that alone turns out to be stronger than any armor she will ever need. Her character flaws also suffer in drawing, writing letters, and acting. But all in all, she's very strong. So much strong that some might argue that would deflate all tension. But all in all, she's definitely a strong person, but still cares about everyone, and is definitely an amazing character. Now, I could go on further details with other characters like say Happy, Gargiel, Wendy, Juvia, or even side characters who are basically like main characters in the form of Kana, Mary Jane, Levi, and Makarov, who are all compelling in their own ways and have their own backstory and arcs in a sense. But to be honest, I don't want to drag out this video longer than needed, so let's move on to the villains. Now, Fairy Tail has various types of antagonists. Many of them range from either Dark Guild or opposing foes, and some of them serve as general threats to the main party. Not only that, but some of them do actually get some fleshed out moments. Even some of them even get redemption at the end, and even join or assist the main group. And while we do have some that just boil down to their crazy personality, almost as a one-note sense, but what's effective about the villains is that majority of them do pose as a genuine threat and challenge for Fairy Tail to overcome. Whether it's things like say the Dark Guilds of the Baram Alliance, with things like Arashian, Grimoire, or Tartaros, or even something like the dangerous King of Dragons, Acnologia. Many of them do serve as a genuine threat and want to not take lightly whatsoever, and even some foes do serve as genuine love to hate villains, and ones that affect Fairy Tail personally, with things like Phantom Lord, Grimoire Heart, or Tartaros being heavy examples. But if there's one villain that truly stands out, it would undoubtedly be Zeref, who's the overarching main antagonist of the entire show. He has a tragic backstory with his own motives in life, as he does what he can to be free of this immortal curse that seems to kill everything in its wake. Even if he does have to cause destruction or various means to do so. Now sure, not every villain is a winner here, as some of them do fall flat in a sense, but all in all, when it comes to Fairy Tail, especially in terms of characters, well, the show itself has a good amount of characters to go over, further helped by each of them having spectacular voice work and performances. Now I know many people have the preference whether it's the sub or dub version, and I'm not going to judge on what your preference is. But having watched the English dub, I'll have to say that every performer in the English dub version gave a damn good performance, with everyone at their A game, all of them even being well-talented or respected VAs, even if some are just bad people in real life, but shh. You can tell that every single voice actor in this show captured lots of the emotion and personality of every character they portrayed in, whether it's people like Todd Haberkorn as Natsu, Jeremy Lay as Lucy, Colleen Klinkenbeard as Urza, Newton Pippin as Grey, among also the likes of people like Tia Ballard as Happy, Brittany Karbowski as Wendy, David Wald, who follows me on Twitter by the way, as Gargiel, Brianna Palencina as Juvia, and Jad Saxton as Carla. And those are just to name a few, as the VAs go really hard on their roles.
You know, it's sort of a long story. Kill yourself.
And what I can tell is that a majority of them do reprise their roles in the 100 Years Quest anime, with sadly a few recasts here and there. But hey, can't win them all. I'm sure the new VAs of say Panther Lily and Levi are doing their best to fill the shoes of their previous VAs. But overall, Fairy Tail really has a strong cast of characters. Now with it being a shonen anime and also having a heavy emphasis on magic, the fight scenes in Fairy Tail are absolutely epic, especially throughout its first 2 seasons, with having lots of absolutely amazing fights, with each member using their key trait magic against the most powerful foes, and doing whatever they can to adapt to their environment as well as to the enemies. The direction, the choreography, the animation, it's all fantastic, whether it's from Natsu using his fire dragon slaying magic, to Grey with his ice maker, or Urza with her various quips. Everything about it just looks absolutely amazing. There are lots of great fights here using magic as both a strength, but also as a risk, as using lots of magic will drain you completely and make you feel exhausted. Not only that, but the main cast will also learn new moves, and as time will go by, they'll be able to learn special new powers as part of their character growth. And attention really is raised when some of the enemies would induce powerful, hard-hitting, and devastating blows. And as said before, there are moments where even new members have time to shine, and I will even have a strong character moment that translates well to finding a newfound power, whether it for example being like on how Dragon Force is applied to Wendy during the Tartaros arc. And thing is, while Natsu may defeat some of the big bads of the series, he can't defeat everyone, and sometimes he might fail on his own, and sometimes he might need the assistance of others to truly take the threat down, which helps him give him strength. The first season really has some amazing fights, like Natsu vs Jalal, Urza vs Azuma, and Natsu vs Sting and Rogue, on top of also having some great exaggerated drawings, especially for the comedic moments here, all of which look really damn good. And despite being now 15 years old, the first season still looks really great, with lots of great color variety here. And I feel like the best the series has looked would have to be through the Russian Seis arc, the Edalus arc, and the Temerald Island arc. All of these just look absolutely amazing. However, when we come to the second season that's more animated by Bridge, things are a bit of a mixed bag here. As while the character designs do get a bit of an upgrade and look more sharper than ever, where I think it gets a little downgrade would have to be the coloring, or the filtering, or whatever you want to call it, where everything just feels like it has this grey somber shade, and the only times that they show actual color would have to be through nighttime, sunset, or even the green caves, outside of also of course the characters themselves having color variety. Now granted, it's not bad or anything, and there are two arcs that I think benefit from this visual style, that being both the Zero arc and the Tartaros arc, the latter of which easily being Fairy Tail's most darkest arc, showing pure tension and dread against a threat that's completely inhumane, among also having still great fights. In both Tartaros, especially with things like say Wendy vs Ezel, Loxus vs Tempest, and Natsu vs Grey against the main big bad of the Tartaros arc. And then we have the former, which works because it's a prequel arc and gives a more calmer but more interesting before the storm tone, while still having some tragedy in the mix. And then lastly we have the final season, which was done by Cloverworks. And honestly, on paper, this has the potential to be the best that the series has looked, with the character models still looking on par and on model, just like with Season 2, while still having the strong coloring backgrounds and variety in Season 1. And for the most part, the animation is actually really good. Until the fight scenes, as sadly the fight quality, despite having some potentially awesome fights on paper, are sadly let down, as most of them just boil down by quick rapid cuts or just multiple shots thrown at the characters. Some of them just don't even pack a punch even, or just give that satisfaction, which honestly really sucks, as it is the final season of Fairy Tail, the biggest one they ever had, with the most epic challenge of all. There was only like a few fights that were actually kinda cool, like the one with Luxus against Wall, or even Natsu against Zeref, or even Natsu and his co against the main final villain. But those are like few and far between, as some fights, while they have cool moments, aren't as visually exciting as they used to be in the previous seasons. Now the visual for the general series is pretty good, barring some hiccups in later seasons. However, the music on the other hand is consistently good. One thing that Fairy Tail nails completely well would have to be a soundtrack, with composer Yasuharu Takanashi taking the helm as composer. And man, did he do a fantastic job, with a lot of the music using the use of things like guitar, organs, and even some bagpipes. And this helps the soundtrack for Fairy Tail stand out among the rest. especially feeling the epic fantasy motif that the series is known for. Truly has some really hype moments that elevate well thanks to an amazing soundtrack. The main theme, especially for Fairy Tail, just absolutely goes hard for some great effect. Not only that, but the OPs as well as the endings that they get are mostly just fantastic. If anyone asks what my favorite opening, it would have to be opening 16, Strike Back by Back On, which is absolutely amazing. Now I could have put some music here to give a sample of, but from the fear of copyright reasons I decided not to. Hence why I'm using the background music for the Fairy Tail game made by Gust as instead, as it's really good. But all in all, Fairy Tail, in terms of presentation, absolutely goes hard. Now with all that said, the big question is that despite having an overall epic journey, a cast of likable characters that are both well defined, as well as having some amazing fight scenes, great world building, and a fantastic score, why did Fairy Tail get so much flack? Well, it could be attributed to 3 big F's that the show is infamous for, that being fan service, filler, and friendship, among other flaws that some people take issue with. Firstly, let's talk about the fan service. And yes, it's a thing. And yes, it can really be annoying at times, as it mainly happens to Lucy that makes her, well, at times, the butt of the joke here. And there's also one episode, especially during the Grand Magic Games arc, where Mary Jane and Jenny have a complete model off. Among also other things like the close-up on the jugs, and other pervy things that come from either the bad guys or even Natsu. Hence why also the WOW sound effect is played during certain parts of that. Oh, and anything else from say Virgo even, or Urza's new armor is shown. But to be honest, while I wouldn't say it's amazing on everything, I don't think it really affects the show that much, and it's more for comedic effect. And yes, I know it's not always funny, but to be honest, lots of other Japanese media, both anime and JRPGs, tend to have some fan service, so I think it's a little bit overblown to knock it down for that aspect alone. As for the filler aspect, well, to be honest, I have skipped all the filler arcs in general, and from what I hear, the filler arcs aren't exactly great, maybe with the latter end of the Key to the Story arc being the exception from what I hear, but all in all, they are just filler, and they mainly exist to keep the show's momentum and viewers' interest, especially while the next manga piece gets fully made and ready to be adapted by. Plus, lots of other anime like say Bleach and Naruto have tons of filler, and while I can understand those who watched the day one, especially on broadcast, and couldn't care less on them, but nowadays, anyone new to Fairy Tail can absolutely skip it if they want to, and effectively they serve as distractions and interesting ways to explore some things. Sure, it doesn't matter in the grand scope of the narrative, but you can say the same for say generic side quests in RPGs, that at the very end, they are completely optional. On top that anyone new to this, as I said before, can skip the filler if they want to or not. And then lastly, we have the friendship, and apparently that's a bad thing. Now it's not uncommon for media to heavily rely its themes on friendship, but for some reason, people like to dog on Fairy Tail for being preachy about it, and as well as in your face about it, especially when you're winning a fight, as apparently that breaks all the tension it had. Though the thing is, it's still an effective message, and one thing that the cast do shows is on how much they care for each other, and it can be attributed by moments from say Natsu, Urza, and Lucy. And as we tell from a recent interview with Hiro Mashima, he says here, and I quote, "To tell you the truth, I wrote the story because I had no friends. My loneliness is what you're seeing here." And that actually makes some sense here with Fairy Tail in general, as further evident with the character Lucy Heartfilia, who serves as both a surrogate to the audience and to himself, really, as she was lonely in the past, and only made friends and a place to call home when she joined Fairy Tail, especially in the real world, given the fear of people generally being scared of being alone, looked down upon, and have no one to support you, among also being antisocial. And I feel at the very least, Fairy Tail reminds me that I do have friends supporting me. I have a general community here, and have worked with tons of various content creators who are all nice people and have their own shared interests as much as mine, even supporting and promoting their videos on social media, so everyone can recognize their hard work and have something worth appreciating for. All of those aspects is why I love the friendship in Fairy Tail, and I don't care what everyone thinks about it. And sure, there are things that can be dogged on, like some parts being repetitive, like the guild being destroyed, some villain characters following the same structure of either being alive at the end of the battle, but some of them being reformed, and some basically being annoying as hell. And not only the fact that not a single member in Fairy Tail, from what I can tell, has actually died, so that does deflate the tension a bit. But aside from those things, I don't think those general aspects, let alone the detractors, should define a series of what Fairy Tail is. Now, is it perfect? No, as I do also have problems with it. And that's mainly due on how some of the pacing can be a bit wonky at times, especially during the latter half of the Ration 6 arc, as well as the latter of the Grand Magic Games arc, and Alvarez, but I do think those arcs could have been much better paced in my opinion, and things like say the Sun Village arc, the Eisenroll arc are just meh in the grand scheme of things. And I do think that some members in Fairy Tail could have had some important sacrifice or something meaningful, but again, what series is there that is completely perfect from any flaws? There isn't any, and I don't think there ever will be, and that's okay. Overall, Fairy Tail is an amazing watch, with lots having just fantastic world building and having just been an epic ride from start to finish, with having some well defined characters that do get enough time to shine, packed in with some amazing fights and an epic score to boot. Now, while it is far from perfect, I still think it's an amazing watch, and an aspect of why I love anime. Now, I don't think that it deserves the hate completely. And while I'm not against anyone who has a problem with it or just doesn't like it in general, as I do think that there's some valid flaws with this show, I don't think that the amount of hate it gets is completely warranted. But hey, when Fairy Tail gets good, it really gets damn good, to the point that I kinda overlook the flaws it generally has at times. And overall, I just had a fun time with this anime. I'm glad to experience a legendary work by Hiro Mashima that's now a decade old even. And I'm also very happy that it's continued to create a legacy now, especially in both Hiro Mashima's work and the anime and game industry. Now thank you everyone. If you made it this far in the video, thank you guys so much for watching, as this was quite a risky and ambitious video I wanted to make, and something to differ from my usual content, and see on how this goes, as I want to take a new approach from my regular stuff. Now, what do I have else planned? Well, at the time of this video, I'm currently watching Eden Zero, another of Hiro Mashima's works, and if this video does well, I might do a full-on review for that as well, and the Rave Master anime as well. I'm also considering on reviewing the 2 Fairy Tail movies, and I do intend to also review the 2 RPGs made by Gust based on Fairy Tail. But that'll be it for me. Let me know down in the comments if any of you have watched Fairy Tail or never seen it, and what your memories about it are. That said, until then, Mad Kaiser out.